The first official Iowa depth chart comes out on Monday, but the picture is already starting to take shape. We'll break down the Hawkeyes depth chart, what it looks like today from quarterback, and every key position battle.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Coming up today, we'll hear from the OC, the offensive coordinator. Tim Lester is going to stop by. Conversation from last week over at Iowa Football Media Day. Some good insight into the speed at the wide receiver position, and a little bit of fun talking hockey as well. Tim Lester coming up a little bit later on. Today, we're going to tackle the depth chart. We're going to hit the defense, what it looks like at this point in time, what it can look like going forward. We'll hit the offense. We'll hit the special teams. A little bit of everything as we break down the depth chart. Coming up next week, next Monday, that is when the official Iowa depth chart will be released. Remember, in the past, this is something that we have seen a ton, usually released around Big Ten Football Media Day, sometimes Iowa Football Media Day. Not the case anymore in this new environment of NIL. That has definitely changed, and we are going to tackle it here today. That is a reason behind it. And in the past, a couple of years back, there's some guys that showed up on the depth chart, and because of that, well, maybe we should get a little bit more money. Maybe we should get a little bit more into the NIL coffers coming our way because now we're listed as a starter. Now we're listed in the two deep, those kind of things, or the other direction. So in order to make this, I guess, a little more equitable, Kirk Ferentz made the decision. We're just going to wait until game week, and that's when we're going to find things out. Now, Friday, if you missed the show, we had Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com. He said maybe in the middle of this week, we could hear some kind of announcement of what's going to happen at the quarterback position before we get the depth chart. We'll keep our eyes on that one. But let's kick things off here on the Iowa football depth chart and get into what we think things look like right now at all the positions. We're going to start today with the offense, and of course, the big conversation begins. Who is going to be the quarterback? Now, hearing some things at practice after the great performance by Jeremy Hecklinski last week at Kids Day, our only open glimpse at things. I've laid it out before. If you're an everydayer, you have heard my thoughts on this one. It is so much easier to go from Jeremy Hecklinski to Hank Brown if a change is going to be made or needs to be made, as opposed to Hank Brown to Jeremy Hecklinski. I think there's too much negativity. There's too much fan frustration. I think if it is close, Hecklinski needs to be the guy. With my depth chart, that's what I have. Now, of course, it was one glimpse, and even talking to a few people and getting some insight into what's been happening at this week at practice, Hank Brown definitely evened things up, and that was, from most reports, the worst practice that Hank Brown had came at the one that we all got to see. I see that as a problem. I see that as an issue. And when you're in front of a live audience, guess what? That's when games are played. They're not played on a practice field. There are certain guys that cannot translate from the practice field into the game, and I have my concerns about that with Hank Brown. So is Jeremy Hecklinski first, Hank Brown for me. I still anticipate something I've said all summer long. We're going to see both those guys early in the football game against Northern Illinois. I don't know if it'll be a true rotation, but I think both the guys are going to get an opportunity in that one. Hopefully more insight coming up this week, though, on that front. Let's go next to the running back position, the way that it is. I think going into the opener, it will be Kamari Moulton, as your starter. Kamari Moulton will get the shot. Of course, had a nice season a year ago. He's back for another year, but I think LJ Phillips is right there. And I will not be surprised one iota, injury aside, if we see LJ Phillips ultimately take over as the starter in this offense. He's compact. He's low to the ground. He's lost a little bit of weight. He was incredibly productive a year ago at South Dakota. He's just so hard to get to the ground. And talk to a defensive coach from a year ago that went up against him. That was one thing they said about LJ Phillips is the difficult nature of that even 3-yard gain, and he gets 5 out of it. And just the frustration that grows out of that. I think we're going to have a fun season coming up of LJ Phillips. I listed 3 wide receivers is the direction that I went here. So your starter out wide, of course, Reese Vanderzee, we know about that one. Tony Diaz, definitely going to be out there a ton this year. And then I put Evan James as a starter at the slot receiver spot. I think you're going to see a ton of Evan James. His speed is real and something that definitely excites John Budmeyer, Tim Lester, and the rest of that offensive staff. They've been looking for that speedster, and they have it now in Evan James, a guy that was very, very productive a year ago at Furman, guy that had a touchdown reception against Clemson, so he's done it against at least talented opponents. I don't know if we want to call Clemson good, but they had a lot of talent last year. He scored a touchdown against them. Those are your starters. Behind Tony Diaz, I put Jarrett Bowie there. I think you've heard, if you listen every day, definitely my thoughts on Bowie, the incredible athleticism after all the injuries that he has sustained, being back out there. I think he's going to be part of the rotation. The backup in the slot spot, I got KJ Parker there. No surprise, we've heard KJ Parker a ton. Now it comes down to consistency for him. And then out wide at the big X receiver position, I put Dayton Howard there. And I think Dayton Howard, you can make the argument, is going to be part of the top 4 this season. How they translate, the guys work through a bunch of different positions as well. That's something that is asked of them in the Iowa offense. But there it is, 6. I should also put this out there too. As I was going through this and kind of coming up with the parameters, no repeats here. We know there's going to be flexibility. And as we get to the offensive line, look, you can probably make the argument that Lucas Allgaier is maybe the top guard backup and maybe the top tackle backup. That's what you think of with Lucas Allgaier. I think they're going to get his feet wet this year. There's going to be some rotations. Well, Allgaier is going to be in there because he's a huge piece for next season. If you, as anticipated, lose Trevor Lauk to the NFL draft, out of eligibility this year is Jack Dotzler. Both those guys moving on. You need tackles. And we know tackles are expensive in the transfer portal, so that's why I think Allgaier is going to be there. Your starters, pretty easy at this point if you anticipate, like I do, that Cale Winter is going to be the guy at the center position. Trevor Lauk out at left tackle. Leighton Jones is your left guard. At the center spot is Cale Winter. That means Cade Pieper goes back to where he played a year ago at right guard. And then your right tackle is Jack Dotzler. But since we're not listing multiple guys at each position here, this is what I came up with for the backups. Your backup center then in this scenario is Michael Myslinski. The 6-year player got granted another year of eligibility. We're just hoping for a little bit of health for. I think we will see some Lucas Allgaier this year, but I put him as the backup at left tackle because if an injury happens there, Dotzler would probably slide over, but again, we're not playing that game right now. So we got Allgaier as your backup at the left tackle spot. At left guard behind Leighton Jones, I went with the transfer from James Madison, Trent Wilson, banged up back during the springtime, maybe starting to find his footing a little bit and make the big step up from the ranks there at James Madison coming up to Big Ten football. Your backup at right guard, I put Big Hudson Parliament there. The big man, I love this group of offensive linemen, the young guys that they have. Coach Barnett's done such a good job of building this thing up after a slow start to the beginning of his career in Iowa City. Has done a great job. And then big 6'9" Cannon Leonard had him as the backup then at the right tackle position. So those are your backups along the offensive line. We're just going too deep. There's other names that we could throw out there with all these different position groups. Obviously, running back, we know they go 4 deep easily at that position. This is how I see it right now. We will see how close we get to that as we go on. We move on to the defense. Next, we go to our depth chart on the defense. Who is going to be the starters at the all-important defensive tackle spot? We'll take a look at that, how deep this team is, and try to crystal ball what this is going to look like a week from today as we will get the Iowa football depth chart for the first time. Stay right there. We're talking defense next. This is your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, Locked On Hawkeyes. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent, it's about having everyone work toward the same goal. That's true in sports just like it is in business. Take a look at Iowa football and their record in November throughout the years under Kirk Ferentz. It is about putting things together, striving for one goal, and you see year in, year out, they're playing their best football at the end of the season. That's what great organizations do, and that's what Iowa football does under Kirk Ferentz. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free at odoo.com/lockedon. That's Odoo, ODOO.com/lockedon. Odoo.com/lockedon. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. 5-star reviews over on the podcast side. All that helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. As we continue, we go from the offense to the defense. We're also going to take a peek here at the special teams. Obviously, not the same kind of volume that we have in these other position groups. Let's go up front. We know the importance here as you feel very good about the linebackers. Jayden Montgomery played well last year. He'll go over to the will spot. You got Cam Buffington taking over at middle linebacker, how good he is. Obviously, Phil Parker, what he does year in and year out with that defensive backfield. All these things together, you feel good about the back seven. However, up front, that's where the question marks are. Let's start out at defensive end. Kenneth Merriweather, we didn't get to see him last Saturday. He was not practicing because a little bit banged up. Sounds like nothing that's going to be overly debilitating there. But Kenneth Merriweather anticipated, a guy that was part of the rotation a year ago, that he's going to be out there. Now, hopefully not making penalties like he did at the end of the first half against Indiana. He's got to be smart out there, but certainly an experienced guy, a guy that's shown some quick twitch, a guy that can definitely get to the quarterback, and you expect a big bounce up for him coming up this year. The other starter for me at defensive end is a guy you saw out there last Saturday. That is Yosei Epinesa. Now, there is still a lot of growth potential for Yosei. It's about doing everything that is asked. And, I talked about the story before of him maybe growing a little bit frustrated at times and getting, maybe questioning himself just a little bit as he was going out throughout the course of practice. And one thing was brought up to him. Look who you're going up against every day. You're facing off against an all-American tackle in Trevor Lauk every single day. Iron sharpens iron. This is going to get him, and most times this is going to be something where this is going to be your most difficult part of the week. It's not the game. It's what you're doing in practice when you're going up ones versus ones and facing off against Trevor Lauk, because there's going to be very few tackles he see this year as talented as Trevor Lauk. The backups at defensive end, we're not going deeper than that. This is just a 2 deep. That's all we're doing here. So we're not going to play around or do anything special on that front. Certainly Drew Campbell, who we saw Saturday, had a couple of good moments, some moments that still show him as a young guy and a guy that's battled injury himself. Definitely you can see the skill set, though, of Drew Campbell. And then on the other side, I went with Kamari Brown as a backup. I think he's going to play a lot this year. Pass rush specialist, that's going to be a piece of it. Ability to get to the quarterback and elite level athleticism for the transfer coming in from Elon. But here it is, the big question marks. Now, here's an easy one at defensive tackle. Yes, it's going to be Bryce Hawthorne. We know that Bryce Hawthorne is going to be one of the guys in the middle. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be out there and he's going to be playing a ton. On the other side, I went with the veteran. I went with, in the middle, Will Hubert. We talked to Will Hubert, if you saw it here on Locked On Hawkeyes. I thought some really good insight from him. A veteran, a guy that knows exactly what you need to play at this level. Is he going to have the size to hold up throughout the course of the year? That remains the question. Then the backups at defensive tackle. I went with Devin Kennedy. I just can't quit the guy. I am hopeful. The bloodlines, what we've heard about him, still got to get bigger, definitely, to be able to play 25, 30 snaps a game even. That's going to be a piece of it. But just like the skill set out of Devin Kennedy and a guy that looked all right out there, I thought, last Saturday. And then the other backup at defensive tackle, I went with Luke Gaffney. I think he's going to be playing at minimum. Are there other guys that can unseat him? Emmanuel Alabaju, we've talked about just the sheer size of him at 6'4", 320 pounds. He just looks different out there. You have guys like that. Some of the young ones, Brad Fitzsimmons, who a guy that definitely looks the part already, has gained a ton of weight since he's got there. We're still talking about a very young prospect, though, at defensive tackle. There are other guys that can maybe help out there. Maybe a Bryce Stevenson, who they got out of the transfer portal. Some other names there, but those are your two deeps there at defensive tackle. Starters Hawthorne and Hubert, with Kennedy and Gaffney as the backups. Let's go over to linebacker. Mentioned earlier, Cam Buffington, the anticipated starter at middle linebacker, great athleticism, an Eastern Iowa kid, grew up wanting to be a Hawkeye, and he definitely is going to get that opportunity this year. That means bouncing out to the will spot will be Jayden Montgomery. Montgomery, who played so well, coming in for Jaden Harrell last year, and he's not tall by any means, but the dude can make plays. He's a good leader. That's something that's important. He'll be out there. Now, when they go 4-3 and they go with the Leo spot out there, I went with the surprise. I think everybody thinks it's going to be Landon Van Kekricks, and I think maybe early in the season, maybe it would. But boy, Derek Weisskopf, he is coming in a big-time way. They definitely like his ability, the athleticism, again, that we talk about there. So I put him as a starter with Van Kekricks as the backup. The backup at the outside spot at will, I went with Preston Reese, banged up a year ago, a special teams demon, great athleticism, great speed. Now he's got to put it all together on the football field and not just running around and making plays on special teams, but everything that is asked of you in the Iowa defense. And then at the middle spot, again, since we're not using guys that we've already used as we're putting this together, I went with one of the young linebackers. I went with Burt Goucher. Maybe he's a guy that can step forward. There's so many, though. They're so deep. It could be a freshman, Billy Wovoda, who I know they're excited about his services. So many good young linebackers. Iowa's done a really, really good job of recruiting this position. And then we wrap things up in the defensive backfield. The 5 starters here. And because of what Tom Caker told us on Friday's show, that there could be a real chance we don't see Tyler Brown in the opener as he's working his way back from injury. That's how I played this. I did not put Tyler Brown in there as a starter. If he's healthy, we know he's going to be a starter at strong safety. Another transfer from James Madison. He's going to be out there, but I played it like he's not going to be out there, and this is what we came up with. Your starters at cornerback. One side, you got Deshaun Lee, most veteran guy out of this group in the cornerback spot, and then Jalen Watson, who we saw quite a bit a year ago. Both him and Rashad Godfrey both had to play a lot in the game against Nebraska. Both had a couple of good plays in that game. Godfrey is one of the backups. And then Darian Jones, a true freshman, at the other spot at cornerback. Love the size, 6'1", fluid, can really move. This is going to be a guy we're going to be talking about a ton going forward. Your starter at free safety, we know, is Zach Lutmer. There's a layup. Free square in the middle of the bingo card with Zach Lutmer. Then I put the starter as Anthony Hawkins, who has been practicing his strong safety with the injury to Tyler Brown. He's versatile. He can play both ways. Love the size, 6'3", a bigger safety than Iowa's had for the most part. Xavier Wampa also had some good size to him as well, but Hawkins definitely has ascended as he's got a lot of reps out there. Then your backups at the free safety and the strong safety spot. I went with Xavier Stiles, another guy that got out of the portal at strong safety. And then Drew McPherson, who is a young guy, just a second-year player. I know coming out of high school, though, they really liked him, and it definitely kind of fits the personality that they normally have at that free safety position. And then finally, we go to special teams. I'm going with Eli Ozick. I like Caden Burr a little bit more on Saturday. I just think that ultimately the transfer, the guy that they went out of the portal and nabbed, he's going to get a little bit more of a leash, a little bit more leeway, and I think Eli Ozick, the North Dakota State transfer, will be the guy at kicker with Caden Burr as his backup. Punter was even more difficult. Boston Everett might have more raw leg talent at this point over Tanner Philpott, who came in from Simpson College. I go to not just a veteran, not just a guy that has experience, because his experience playing in the old Iowa Conference is a lot different than playing in the Big Ten. It is Boston Everett translating over, coming in. He's never kicked an American football game. And that kind of transition, when you have a guy that's pretty much on equal footing, I'm going to go with the veteran here in Tanner Philpott. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with just a crack at the return guys in special teams. Zach Lutmer, a lot of people are pointing to that. I'm going to go there as well at the punt return spot. I had KJ Parker as his backup. Saw him a little bit. How about your kick returners? I'm going to go with Brevin Dahl in one spot, KJ Parker in the other, with backups Nathan McNeil and Evan James. Love the speed element of getting him out there. We'll see. I mean, talk about throwing some darts at the wall. They don't practice very often, and certainly not live action kickoff duty, so it's one of those things you just got to see it. Brevin Dahl, we know, has elite level speed. We'd love to get him out there. And all these guys have play-making potential. And if you're not going to take a step forward in special teams, and certainly in the return game, than what you had with Caden Weechin, if you can at least be good, though, and solid like Iowa normally is, year in and year out. That's going to go a long, long way. Well, we talked about the offense to kick off the show and how I see the two deep a week away from the actual depth chart being released. Well, let's hear from the man that's running the offense. Tim Lester is going to join us on the other side. Some thoughts from Iowa Football Media Day with the Iowa offensive coordinator. That's next. Stay right there. This is your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, Locked On Hawkeyes. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick on who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next free bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is a fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on the matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. You might be a Cubs fan and you're looking for somebody that's hot. How about Alex Bregman? What he's done here recently, just hitting the ball all over the yard. Take a shot with him or your favorite Cub, your favorite Twin, Brewer, Cardinal, Royal, whoever it may be. They got you covered on FanDuel and Daily Dingers. Boy, it is a fun way to stay involved. Are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of MLB. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Here on the Locked On Network, your team every day. We got you covered each and every day on the Hawkeye front. Whatever your favorite team is in the other sports, we have you covered there as well. Let's hear from the Iowa offensive coordinator, Tim Lester.
Way as far as how much he enjoys just being out there and working with the guys.
How are Evan James and Tony Diaz weight-wise right now?
I don't know the exact. I know they're up 20 pounds since they got here, right? They showed up in January, and I think Evan was like in the high 140s, low 150s, and now he's like 170s. I think Tony was like in the high 150s or low 160s. He's like high 180s or 170s now. Like that, it's like, hey, meet Ray, Ray, meet the new guys, and it's an adjustment. And I don't know anything about I'm not saying anything negative about the two schools that came from the strength program, because as freshmen you're really not into it yet anyway. But they came into the Iowa strength program, and they're eating and they're lifting and watching their weight, and it's not going to stop. Like in the next couple of years, I mean, they're going to be 185, 190 pounds. I don't think they'll be that this year. But where they were, as far as just being healthy and being able to take hits, they both put on 20 pounds in 8 months since they got here. So it's a good start. You couldn't really do any more than that in a good weight way, and so we got them to the best place they can be for this season. And in future seasons, I can only assume they're just going to get bigger and bigger,
Going back to DJ, you gave him the Brock Bowers comp, or said you could use him in a similar way as Brock Bowers. Maybe not specifically with DJ, but when you find a NFL comp or another college comp for a guy and how they're used, how does that happen? Do you you just watch an NFL Network and you see a Brock Bowers play, or how does that go down?
Yeah, I think I watch football all the time, right? That's what we do for a living, and it's funny when I'm not at work and people come up and they want to talk football, and they're always like, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk football. And my wife's always like, he'll do it all day with you. Like, this is what I do. And so, I watch a ton of football. So watching Brock Bowers move around and run just reminded me of DJ. Last year, I'll tell you the comparison when we've been doing the tush push since 2017 or 18. When I was at Purdue, I watched Northwestern do it. I think it was on a fourth down. They motioned a guy in and pushed him, and so we started doing it at Western Michigan. And then Philly took it to a whole new level with the three dudes, and they've taken it, and so we've always still used it. And when I saw Mark Gronowski on the field for the first time in the fall with shoulder pads and helmets on, he reminded me of Jalen Hurts. I looked at his body, and I was like, holy mackerel, he's huge. Like, just a muscled up. And I was like, we're already good at the tush. I'm like, we might be really good. So we started putting in more plays. We put the jet sweep on, and then we put the roll into it. And so you just look at their body types, you look at them move. I think Mark throws a little bit like Jalen Hurts too, So every once in a while you run into that comparison, and then you can learn because there's a ton of great football coaches in the NFL. So you start watching how those. Randomly enough, I go to Green Bay every year, obviously, and so Getsy is the quarterback coach there, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Raiders with Brock Bowers. So it worked out really good because I was hanging out with Getsy. So I got the first take. Actually, there's something on the board, and I'm like, listen, I know this whole offense. Like, what's that word? Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, I brought it with me, and then we started talking. And so there's always ways to try to continue and to get better. And I always tell my guys, it's their job to execute at a high level and under pressure. It's my job to try to put them in positions to make it as easy as possible to execute. If I can use a shift or a motion to get you better leverage, you still got to run the route and catch it, But I'm trying to continue to put you in the best place humanly possible for your talent to shine. But it's not like I'm going to. Guys aren't going to be running wide open all the time. But hopefully I can get them more open by a step or two with some of the stuff you see with shifts, motions, and different play designs. And so when you have a guy like a comparison guy, could be wide out, could be a tight end. You just turn on the NFL film and you start watching all the different things that they did with them. PFF is a great thing for that, So, but yeah, it's been fun this offseason studying some of that stuff, and the stuff's been good thus far.
You mentioned route running. I know this summer you mentioned Caden, probably not one of his strengths out there on the field. How do you feel about the wide receiver group as a whole, what they're doing, both timing-wise and route running?
Yeah, I think it's good. The one thing that we still have to get our depths better, and there's so many, like when you're talking about running routes in this offense, it's not just full split, right? We're full split, we're mid split, we're tight. So the sprays are everything, and how much you spray, and what's your landmark to get to before you break out or in. So to play wide receiver in this offense, there's a lot more to it. It's not like, hey, you're at the bottom of the numbers every time. Let's just work on our 12 routes. These routes, there's 12 here. There's 12 when you're motioning, and then we snap the ball. And then there's 12 when you're motioning this way. And then there's the time you're lining up right next to the tackle, and you got to run that route, right? And so watching these guys, I've been talking about Dayton and Bowie, the veterans, the Reese, KJ Parker, and even Tony and Evan, because they were lost a little bit in the spring as far as like, how do I run this route from in here? You got to show them, you got the guy perfect. I can guarantee leverage if I put you here. And from spring to now, them understanding, and we're not perfect yet. Evan's got a couple things he can still get better at, but man, he can double up at top and make plays. He made a catch today that was insane, and so it's been fun. They've all gotten so much better at understanding where to get to, how to get there, and we're doing a lot less being rerouted. Like we got to play fast, man. Like we're working off the safety, and you're taking time to deal with that linebacker. You need to run by him. Like if you have to run around him, you have to run at him to stop his feet. But like we're waiting the safety, and we had a little issue in our first year here, and it got better second year, and now we're better. Still, we're not perfect. Where we'll come off and we'll be doubling up and working with this linebacker, trying to get around him, and meanwhile we're getting sacked. We got to go, and we got a couple guys that. Naturally, Evan is a natural. He runs now. He gets everywhere fast. DeAndre Smith, our young freshman, he plays fast. Everything he does is fast. He is rolling. No one's getting in his way, and so it's been fun because the guys see how they're getting it done, and our even some of our veterans are getting better, right? So it's been fun. The competition in that room is fantastic, and it's just making everybody better.
Tim, you say you could sit here and talk football all day.
All day.
Yet you have a son that is a high-level hockey player. How did that happen?
Well, my wife loves hockey.
Is that right?
Loves hockey. Yeah, she was when I met her, she was the assistant general manager of hockey. Really? Yes, a CHO. It was the Memphis
CHO?
River Kings.
Oh, okay.
Memphis River Kings. I was playing arena football, and they won it the year we were there, which was really sweet. And so she grew up going to. She's a Ranger fan, Pierre LaRouche. Like she used to. So I was the head coach of Western Michigan, right? Yeah. And they're really good at hockey.
Yeah.
We won the national championship, and. So she can sit in there with the head coach, like Andy Murray, and they're talking names from the 1990s and 80s, and it just rolls off her tongue, right? I have so many signed sticks, like Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky. It's all in my house. It's for Father's Day, I got a Miracle jersey, the 1980s team signed. Has an 80. It was signed by everybody. My wife got that for me. I just love the sport. Like it's a physical, fast sport. It's a lot like our sport. How they play 70 games, I don't know. I wish I could skate. I can't. like when they have the parents' games, you know, like she'd go out there, and I can't even stand those games. I wish I learned how to. But yeah, so they love it, and they both those guys, they also play football. But yeah, hockey is part of mom's life, and then we lived in Michigan. Sure. It's hard not to skate when you're in Michigan, and so they've grown up around. I think it's the one time as kids. I remember talking to Clark Lee. We were at Syracuse together a long time ago. He's head coach of Vanderbilt, and his son C3 came back from hockey the first time. And he plays hockey, so we still see him at like AAA tournaments or wherever they're going, Nashville or wherever they're at. And I mean, the kids come off the ice and they are drenched in sweat, and they're happy as hell. They're like, that was so much fun. I mean, it looks miserable. I mean, just covered in sweat, and it's a fun sport, and you can play it your whole life. I mean, there's like 50 and older leagues, and guys are still out there playing. You know, they're good.
That is Tim Lester, Iowa offensive coordinator from Big Iowa Football Media Day last week. Out of time for today. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Still got some more coach and player interviews we'll be passing along as we get ready for Iowa football season. Again, make sure you hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. 5-star review on the podcast side. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.